To you. You're not progressing. In proportional comparative terms, you're back to where you were in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. We're in deep trouble in America. And so what I'm going to do this evening is try to go across on these issues and show you what we're doing wrong. Up front, you already know it in my book, Black Labor, White Wealth. I wrote that book to systematically track and show you exactly what the dominant white society did over a 1,300-year period. Every technique, every strategy, every custom, and in law to put you into the lowest part of a ditch, to put you in a racial monopoly game at the bottom of it, that you'll be totally equipped to play in this game. And that was called slavery, and later on Jim Crow segregation. And we were in trouble. And the Black Labor, White Wealth book tracked all that for you. But Powernomics says to you, on the other hand, that even though whites now got a monopoly is not perfect. White racism is not perfect. You can't beat it by following the Powernomics principles. You can't beat it because white racism is not perfect. And so I put out a book called Powernomics. It says that everything that was done to you, here's how you can beat it. But you got to move quickly before the doors close on you. Because I said that by year 2000, Hispanics would displace you. You would no longer be the dominant majority population in America. You would become a minority population. Instead of being a second-class citizen, as you've been for over 100 years, you now become third-class citizens as of year 2000. And then by 2013, that you're going to become a permanent underclass. An underclass means those individuals who, by the pure nature of your social economic circumstances, you're predestined to live as beggars and criminals for the rest of your existence. And that's what you're locked into now. I don't give a darn who tells you a lie about that. You're now destined to be either seen as criminals or beggars. That's why nobody's going to address your issues. And we're going to talk about that this evening. We're going to go through all these things to show you must start immediately to try to change these things. And we're going to start off talking first and foremost about inappropriate behavior. So Powernomics then is the first step to deal with all these issues. Powernomics is a concept that I crafted. It's a new way of seeing, thinking, and behaving in race matters so that you can begin to become a very competitive group. Would you switch to the next slide for me, please? Now, as I said a few minutes ago, the whole point of slavery, forget what Bill O'Reilly, forget what Rush Limbaugh, forget what white folks say on TV about, well, put slavery behind you. You cannot put slavery behind you. There's only two things you can have in this world. You got a past and you got a future. There is no such thing as a present. You cannot have a present. It's either the past or the future. If you don't watch your past, you're going to make the same mistake over and over again, or you'll never correct your conditions. And we went through the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement did not address the primary purposes of slavery. What were the purposes of slavery? The primary purpose of slavery was to intentionally maldistribute almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, controls of all resources into the hands of the dominant white society. So that by the end of slavery, that they owned almost 99.5% of everything, and blacks own absolutely nothing. Now you went through a civil rights movement. What did you gain out of that? Did they redistribute some of the resources? No. They didn't redistribute any resources. What they gave you were things that are unmeasurable, intangible, indefinite. Some of my good friends, and I would ask them, I said, what are you looking for? They said, well, what we want, and I understood why they was doing it, and they were right in doing it. But they didn't get further enough down the line to see what integration is going to do. And they asked them, what do you want? They said, we want freedom. But you can't measure freedom. Right. And you know what white folks did then? They said, what do you want? They said, freedom. They said, abracadabra, y'all got it. They said, what else y'all want? They said, well, we want equal opportunity. They said, abracadabra, you got it. What else y'all want? They said, well, we want equality. They said, abracadabra, you got it. Now get the hell out of here, don't ever come back, we'll give you everything you need. But we didn't get anything that was tangible. We didn't get any tangible things. So consequently, when they left us in a hole. Where in this country, as a direct result of slavery and Jim Crow segregation, whites then at that point, they had the population numbers. Why they had the population numbers? Because the first thing that was put in place after 1789, when the Declaration of Independence was approved and ratified in 1789, by 1790, the first act of Congress was to pass the first immigration law. The first immigration law says this is going to be a white nation. And no blacks can come here unless you're coming here as slaves. And what did that do? That made us the only permanent minority in this country. Now, why is that important? Because if you're the only permanent minority, look what position you're in a society called a democracy that says the majority will win and rule, and the minority will lose and suffer. When you become the only permanent minority, which means you be the only permanent loser. And yet I got black folk that ever since 1790 been going all over this country bragging about their minority. I'm a minority, I'm a minority. Why in the hell would you keep telling people you're a minority? I'm a loser. Right. Bragging about I'm a loser. Why do you let people call you a minority? Exactly. Which means they call you a loser, you want to know why they're up, why you're on the bottom, why they're against you, everything you want to do, why they won't do anything for you. Because you just told them you were a loser. And the worst part about it is that even when we become the majority, and I'm going to talk about that a little later in my presentation, even when we become a majority, we still absolutely refuse to act like a majority. When I go to Detroit, Michigan, I write a plan for Detroit, Michigan about how to develop a business district to serve the unserved population, the black population of that city. And I go downtown before the city council and the mayor. They said, Dr. Anderson, we welcome, we appreciate your being here. We have to honor you. I said, before you do that, tell me one thing. They said, what's that? I said, what are you doing for black folk in the city? What are you giving them? Since you called them, they said, well, we have an office of minority affairs upstairs for them. I said, well, hold it a minute now. How can you call black folk a minority in a city like Detroit where you're 90% of the population? How can blacks be 90% of the city? You call them a minority. The minority are the whites. They said, well, we got a minority program. They said, well, I said, what are you doing for blacks? Well, we are now petitioning to increase, Doctor, we're going to increase the minority set aside from 5% to 10%. So that black folk can compete for 10%. I said, hell, black folk can be competing for all 90%. Why are black folk competing for 10% in a city where they should be getting 90%? They said, well, it's against the law for us to try to do what everybody else do because of the Richmond and Harper decision, which says that that a minority cannot, you cannot single out a minority and give them some preferential treatment. That's a Supreme Court ruling. I said, the way you beat them is quit calling yourself a minority. In Richmond, Virginia, you're the dominant population. Yes, they went to the Supreme Court and they lost. If I had been to the Supreme Court, I would rule against them too. Because they had no business going to the Supreme Court asking for a set-aside for a minority when they make up 90% of the damn population. You got to be stuck on the other side of stupid with Gorilla Glue to be the majority going out asking for something for minorities. But they did it. And every time I go to that, they say, well, we can't get past that Supreme Court ruling. Also, yes, you can. All the city of Detroit has to do is to declare itself a city where it got a black majority population. And then let whites go downtown and fight to get the minority set aside. Does that make any sense to you all? Yes. And I said, this is so simple. Why are you doing it backwards? And so again, number one, whites then control 85% of the population. That time, now we're 12.4. That means they outnumber you in all respects because of that first immigration law in 1790. The next one, income and wealth. At that time, in 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, whites owned and controlled, that time, 99.5% of all the wealth. We had approximately 287,000 black people that were free. And those 287,000 black folk had successfully acquired 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. And here we are 140 to 150 years later. And I go look at what's the wealth status of black folk in America. And guess what? They still own and control only 1/2 of 1%. What have you been doing for the last 150 years? Besides dancing and singing and rapping. Why are you still in the same position in 2013 that you were in 1860? And every February there's some civil rights leaders bragging about how far we've come. That is backwards thinking. How can you be going forward at the same time you're going backwards? And brag about it. You have not progressed not one iota in terms of wealth and income. Not one iota. And whites still have a monopoly of control. Media, print, electronic and print. Whites still control almost 99% of that. You don't own and control any media. In proportional terms right now, out of 12,000 radio stations, 1,500 newspapers, and about another 12,000 cable systems in the United States, and daily newspapers, black people own 35 thousandths of 1%. Let me try it again, because I don't think y'all heard. Did y'all hear what I said? If you don't have any media, you can't what? You cannot communicate. If you can't communicate, you can't what? You can't organize or orchestrate. How in the world can 41 million black folks be happy and only control not a damn thing? Now, I built WOWD in Tallahassee, Florida in 1972, an FM station. I also had interest in the AM station in the top of the Superdome in New Orleans. I fought to get control of media because I could then dictate, because Tallahassee was the capital of Florida. But now, right now, here we are now, we have gone backwards. We own less black radio stations today than we did in 1970. You lost over half your radio station. When the Telcap Act was lifted in 1970, in 1996, you started going backwards. At least one time we used to have some weekly newspapers, and most of them gone out of business. Where is your black daily newspaper? Where is it? I can go around there, most urban cities I can find daily Hispanic newspapers. Where are the black newspapers? Where are your black cable systems? Where are your black TV stations? Y'all got my point? Yeah. Go down to the next one. Elected officials. Right now, we have less than 1% of elected officials in the United States. And in 1960, I did a survey to find out how many black elected officials we had. We had about, at that time, we had 103 black elected officials in the entire United States. Only 103. And that was in 1960. I looked at the social discomfort indicators. That means things like welfare, food stamps, and criminalization, poor, dysfunctional schools, and all this thing. And see where black folks stood in terms of social discomfort. That was in 1960. I waited until 1990 and did the same exact study. Why? Because in 1990, I felt in a 30-year time period, obviously something had happened. What had happened? That the number of black elected officials in the United States had gone up from 103 to over 9,000. So I said, now, if we've had a 9,000% increase in black elected officials in America, then obviously conditions have vastly improved for black folk in America. I would look at the same results in the discomfort indicators. Guess what? Not only didn't we improve, we went backwards. Why? Because there's no direct link or connection between putting a black person in a public office, elected to an office, and black folk getting benefits. And that totally destroys the whole concept of participating in politics. Politics is based on the simple premise of quid pro quo. One hand washes the other. You take care of me, I scratch your back. I put you in elected office, you owe me. Except for black people. It doesn't apply for black folk. It applies for everybody else. We get no benefits by putting a person in a public office. Because you know why? The first thing they're going to do when they get elected to office, that nobody else on earth would do. As soon as a black person gets elected to a public office, the first thing they're going to say, I'm here to represent all the people. In a nation of representative government, which means you're supposed to represent the people who elected you to office. You're supposed to dance in politics first with the people who took you to the dance. If black people put you in office and you represent a black district, the first thing you're supposed to do is represent them and speak out in their behalf. And yet, we got all these people that won't represent black folk. And just about a month ago, Carl Nelson on his radio show, I was on his radio show, he comes on in Captain Hughes station 4 to 7 every day. He said, Dr. Anderson, he said, what do you think about the fact that the new chairman for the Congressional Black Caucus says that the Congressional Black Caucus don't represent black folk, they represent all the people? I said, I cannot answer that in a public meeting. Because y'all know exactly what I would say, don't you? Because I've never bitten my tongue in my life. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. I'm going to tell you where to go and try to pay your way there if I can. So next one on there, judicial system. 99% of most of the judges in America, again, are whites. Out of 121 possible Supreme Court justices, we've had one black one, and we got one now, I don't know what the hell he is. Maybe Bob Law knows who he is. What is he a mulatto? What's the guy's name? Clarence Thomas. I don't know. But I know he hasn't said anything in almost 25 years. And he's never one time said anything positive for black folk. He won't address a black issue, so I know he's not black, so I don't know what he is anyway. Product, producer, service, and goods. Whites produce 99% of all the service and goods. We produce practically nothing. Next one for me, please. So consequently, our problem is, what Bob wanted me to address today, and that was my little introduction to what I'm going to talk to you about, is one, inappropriate behavior. Impediments to America right now, and competitiveness and wealth building. The first is inappropriate group behavior patterns. As Bob indicated so excellently earlier, he's not talking about individual behavior that you all think is a proven appropriate behavior. He's talking about group behavior. It is group behavior that hurts us. And so that's the first thing. The second one is we have no communities and no sense of community. We're the only people on earth and the only people in America that have no communities and no sense of community. And the third thing that's killing us is a failure to advocate for and practice group economics. Next one, please. Now, for the black race then has been socially engineered then, and that's where the inappropriate behavior is coming from. We've been socially engineered of all these years going back to the slave codes of 1705 and slave codes of 1710. We've been taught to see everything upside down and backwards. We've been taught to see everything upside down and backwards. The slave codes of 1705 spell out very specifically how whites were to behave and how blacks were to behave. That a white person could never give respect to a black person, could never call him Mr., or never give him a major title, or never put him over a white person. And the same slave code on the other side says that defined what a black person could or could not do. He could not look a white person in the eye. He could not look down at a white person. He could not talk to a white person with his hat on. He could not play games with white folk. He had to step off the sidewalk when whites came along. He could not touch a white woman. Those were the slave codes. In 1710, we had similar slave codes. And they came out with a policy called meritorious manumission. Meritorious manumission, which says if we could find some black people, who would do three things, we'll make exceptions. We'll let meritorious means earned. Manumission means freedom. If they can demonstrate one or three things to us, we'll let a few of these blacks go get out, because those are good Negroes. One, if they could prove that they could invent something that would increase wealth building for whites by inventing something, picking more cotton, or doing whatever it was, then that white person would say, this is a good one, we'll let him go, we'll set him free. Secondly, if he in fact could protect a white family, or save a white person's life, he could get meritoriously manumitted. Or thirdly, he could be manumitted and set free if he in fact would squeal on, tell on, or inform on, or block his people from a slave revolt, or trying to run free. That was called meritorious manumission. It was put in place in 1710. Now you all start talking about, well, you know, Willie Lynch. Ain't no such thing as Willie Lynch. I never could track that down. Ain't no such thing as Willie Lynch. That's some stuff people made up. But the meritorious manumission was law in Virginia, started in Virginia, South Carolina. It says, we will set a black person free if he in fact would squeal on and tell on what another black person is trying to do that would benefit black folk. And that's why, in going back and checking what white folks classified as about 360-something possible slave revolts, a black person squealed in every possible revolt. Not one slave revolt got by that a black person didn't squeal in. When black people in the early 1800s like Vesey and Prosser and Nat Turner, and even when John Brown tried to free him at the Harper's Ferry, a black person was always squealing, telling, trying to get meritorious manumission. It hasn't changed.
That's right.
We got the same thing right now, all these blacks that Bob is concerned about. Because I know he loves all these big black millionaires and rappers and dappers and blacks running with a ball. You see, those people are not as safe as a birth control pill. All they try to do is get meritorious manumission. They ain't gonna do anything for black folk. You can call them a billionaire, a millionaire, anyone you want to call them. They're not gonna put anything, not gonna do anything that white folk would not approve of. They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna violate the rules of meritorious manumission. And so consequently, the black folk have been socially engineered because of those laws, saying we want you black folk to emulate us. Do what we do. We have no interest in you. We'll punish you, chase you down, whip you, beat you, mistreat you, deprive you, lie to you. And now we want you blacks to do the same thing to each other. If we don't like blackness, we don't want you to like